Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another edition of Budget Magic. So this week we are heading to Standard to play a deck I'm really excited about. This deck is built around Bloodbriar, one of the more powerful but pretty much forgotten commons from Eldritch Moon. So this deck is of note because it is pretty close to rotation proof. It does have one card that's going to rotate, but we'll explain that and talk about why that doesn't really matter that much as we go through the deck. This is green-white Bloodbriar. As you can see, 86 bucks in the paper world, 27 ticks on Magic Online. A quick reminder before we break down the deck, if you enjoy Budget Magic and this green-white Bloodbriar deck, it would be amazing of you if you could take a second, click the like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment. All those things are great ways you can support the site for free. So let's talk about the deck. So the key package of the deck is Bloodbriar and Tireless Tracker. So Tireless Tracker is a powerful card. Everyone knows it. When you play a land, you get a clue. When you sack a clue, Tireless Tracker gets +1/+1. Well, Bloodbriar is like best friends with Tireless Tracker. It doesn't give us a clue token, but what it does do is get a +1/+1 counter whenever we sack a clue. Or any permanent, actually. So in some ways, we get to play 8 Tireless Trackers. And the idea is, we're going to sack things and make our Bloodbriars super huge, and hopefully they will be able to take over the game and just beat our opponent down when we get them up to like 8/9s and 9/10s and 10/11s. And we can also grow the Tireless Tracker alongside, so that gets really big as well. So we get some really huge 3-drops that can be really devastating for the opponent. So we do have a sort of combo in the deck, and the combo involves the one card that is going to be rotating in a few weeks, and that is Tragic Arrogance. So Tragic Arrogance basically makes each player sack everything except a creature, an artifact, an enchantment, and a planeswalker, but we get to choose for both players, so we get to keep our best stuff and give our opponent their worst stuff. So why Tragic Arrogance is very important right now, I also don't think it really matters that much, and I think this deck is still playable post-rotation, because the reason Tragic Arrogance is so good right now is because Bant Company is 40-something% of the metagame, and Tragic Arrogance is very, very, very good against Bant Company. However, Bant Company is going to be rotating when Tragic Arrogance rotates, so while we do lose the ability to play Tragic Arrogance, we also sort of lose the desire to play Tragic Arrogance, because without Bant Company being the boogeyman of the format, we wouldn't want 4 Tragic Arrogance in the main deck anyway, so we will have to remove the Tragic Arrogances at rotation, but this deck will survive otherwise, and it's pretty easy to just substitute in a couple things and keep this deck going in its same form. So if you decide you want to play the deck, don't worry about losing everything at rotation. It will be just fine. So the reason Tragic Arrogance is sweet is it's super good against Bant Company, like I said. Also cool synergy with Bloodbriar. So say we get a bunch of clue tokens, some creature tokens, a bunch of stuff. We cast the Tragic Arrogance. We sack everything except our Bloodbriar. We can potentially pump a Bloodbriar up into a 15-16 or something, and maybe just one-shot our opponent, especially if we can leave them with just a single tap creature. We can put all those counters on Bloodbriar, get in one big attack, and potentially win the game that way. And while that's really cool, it's not plan A of our deck. It's just something sweet that can happen sometimes. So, like I said, losing Tragic Arrogance isn't the end of the world. The reason the deck is still playable even without Tragic Arrogance is we get a ton of sacrifice synergies. So, we get Thraben Inspector and Uvenwald Mysteries, which make clue tokens, which we sacrifice to pump up our Bloodbriar, pump up our Tireless Trackers, plus Uvenwald Mysteries is kind of like a army in a can. When a creature dies, we get a clue. When we sack a clue, we get a 1/1. So we can keep grinding value out of the Uvenwald Mysteries. Once Tragic Arrogance is gone, I think I'll actually add another Uvenwald Mysteries to the deck, because it's been super good whenever I've actually drawn it. And then Evolving Wilds seems weird in a 2-color deck, but it's a free sacrifice for Bloodbriar. So one of the things that's really powerful is to play Bloodbriar on turn 4, immediately play Evolving Wilds, crack Evolving Wilds, get that +1/+1 counter on Bloodbriar to make it a 3/4. And as a 3/4, it dodges Incendiary Flow, for example, dodges Fiery Impulse, some of the popular removal in the format. Blighted Woodland, the deck has a neat twist to it. It's mostly here because it's another sacrifice land that we can use to pump up our Bloodbriar, but we have a cool second package in the deck that does want us to have a lot of mana. We also have some sacrifice-based removal, so we have Angelic Purge, unconditional removal that exiles, hits artifacts and enchantments as well, really strong because it hits, for example, Emrakul, and since it exiles, our opponent can't grapple with the pass to Emrakul back. There's a lot of those graveyard synergies going around, so it gets rid of something forever and hits anything. The downside is it makes us sack a permanent when we cast it, but we don't really mind because it pumps up our Bloodbriar. If we sack a clue token, it also pumps up Tireless Tracker. Remember, Tireless Tracker triggers whenever a clue is sacked, even if we don't necessarily sack it to draw a card, but we sack it to something like Angelic Purge. We also can sack our Primal Druid, which turns into a Rampant Growth when we sack it, so it's good sacrifice fodder, also just holds down the ground in the early game. And then, kind of moving into the second part of our deck, we also have Eldritch Evolution, and you're probably wondering, well, what do we do with Eldritch Evolution? So far, we've seen all 1, 2, and 3 drops. Where is it really going? What's the point? We're going to sack our Thraben Inspector to get a Tireless Tracker, a Bloodbriar, and we do that sometimes, but it'll make more sense as we talk about kind of the second half of the deck. And also a single Hedron Archive gives us some ramp, draws us some cards, and is another sacrifice effect to pump up our Bloodbriars. And then we just have some Duskwatch Recruiters, kind of the last card of the first half of our deck, just to generate value, grind through our deck, give us some card advantage. The second half of our deck is where Eldritch Evolution really comes into play. So we have Thalia's Lancers, a 4/4 for 5 that tutors for a legendary card when it enters the battlefield. So we can sack a 3-drop like Tireless Tracker or Bloodbriar, and tutor out a Thalia's Lancers, which can tutor up a few silver bullets. So we got Sigarda, Huron's Grace, and we can also use Eldritch Evolution to get these all by themselves. So we cast a Thalia's Lancers, then if we sack it to Eldritch Evolution, we can tutor out any of these one-ofs. So Sigarda's Huron's Grace is really good against Emrakul because it gives us hexproof, so our opponent can't steal our turn. Also, we make a bunch of mana thanks to Hedron Archive, thanks to our Blighted Woodlands, so we can make a bunch of creature tokens using the stuff in our graveyard that we've sacrificed over the course of the game to kind of go wide or just make chump blockers to stabilize. So Sigarda is mostly for Emrakul matchups, but it's just a big flyer on its own. Linvala is our silver bullet for aggro matchups, gains us a bunch of life, sometimes gives us a 3/3 angel token as well. But basically it's a 5-point life swing that helps us get out of the danger zone against aggressive decks or decks with burn. And then the most powerful thing we can do is set up the meld combo of Gisela and Bruna, so we can use our Tireless Trackers in our Eldritch Evolution to get these cards on the battlefield at the same time, meld into Bracella, and then Bracella is extremely hard to beat. Plus, both of these cards are pretty good on their own. Gisela gives us some more lifelink and evasive threat. Bruna can reanimate almost any creature in our deck because we have a ton of humans and angels. But the main thing we want to do here is meld them around into Bracella, which just takes over the game. As far as the mana base, pretty straightforward. Canopy Vistas, Tranquil Expanses as duals. We have the Evolving Wilds, the Blighted Woodland we talked about before, and then a bunch of basics. In the sideboard, we get a bunch more removal. Stasis Snare, Blessed Alliance, good against Emrakul. Blessed Alliance also has the advantage of gaining us some life, which is relevant. Pulse of Marasa, very good in grindy matchups, helps if like our meld combo gets killed. Even just getting back a Bloodbriar or a Tireless Tracker is a lot of value. Plus gaining 6 life is a huge deal against like the Thing in the Ice, Thermo Alchemist decks, some of those type of aggressive decks. And then we have some more unconditional removal. Quarantine Field can hit planeswalkers. Collective Effort hits enchantments like Fevered Visions while also killing big creatures like Emrakul. And Angelic Purge, just an additional copy. And then we have Planar Outburst as a Wrath Eerie Interlude as a way to save our creatures. And then Vile Redeemer, not actually very good. It's a 3/3 flash in our deck. We do have a tiny bit of colorless mana, but we can't very consistently activate the make a Scion token for each creature that died this turn. And that is green-white Bloodbriar in Standard. So I think this deck is pretty sweet. It's pretty fun. If you like synergistic card drawing mid-range decks that can do some really powerful things like meld into Bruna, make Bloodbriars and Tireless Trackers into massive threats, and potentially even get the cool combo kill with Tragic Arrogance, this might be the deck for you. And as I mentioned before, it's going to mostly survive rotation. When Spant Company leaves, we don't care that Tragic Arrogance is gone, so we can just toss a couple cards in that one slot, and boom, we have a deck that's ready to play on week 1 of Kaladesh Standard as well. So kind of walking the line between a post-rotation build and a current build, but it's close enough to a post-rotation build that you don't need to worry about buying it. You're not just going to lose all your value because a huge majority of the deck, all except for Tragic Arrogance, will still be around after rotation. And I even played a couple games with a post-rotation version of it, and it plays pretty much the same. One thing I realized while we were playing the matchups is that while Tragic Arrogance is amazing against Ban, there's some matchups where it's not very good. So we actually sided out Tragic Arrogance in a decent amount of matchups. So it's not really that key to the deck. And the combo kill with Bloodbriar is more of a sometimes thing that's cool if it happens rather than the real focus of the deck. It's just a neat synergy that happens to be in there. So good for now, good for post-rotation, a lot of fun to play, can do some really cool things. So anyway, that's been our green-white Bloodbriar deck. I hope you enjoy the gameplay videos. Thank you very much for watching, and I will talk to you soon.